What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Attacking the Paint. I'm your host, James Ivy Williams, founder and CEO of Between the Lines Sports. And today I have with me a near and dear friend, Jerica Williams, aka Williams to me, just Williams. She is the head coach of Windward High School in California. Jerica, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
Good Williams plug too. Good Williams plug.
For sure. We that's what I like. For me, like, this is one of the things I think when we met. While Williams is not is such a common name, rather, having building a relationship with somebody that randomly you never knew before, and to the point where we just started calling each other, "What's up, Williams?" That's how we just started doing that, and it sticks. Like, anytime I text you, I'm like, "What's up, Williams?" It's just one of those things. Yeah. So talk to me a little bit. Tell me, I know you just finished the Final Four, and you are in a desert oasis is the word that you use. Tell me about where you are, and what you're doing. Tell me what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, way to put me on blast a little bit there, Williams. I like to get away, not necessarily in a vacation setting right after the season ends, but I call it like to recharge. I think there's a difference between vacating and recharging, because sometimes we come back from a vacation, you feel like you need like a day to recover from the vacation before you get back into productivity. And so I like to get away in a space where I can change like my scenery and still be really productive. And that, it's very isolating. There's no neighbors here in sight. Like, it's just something that I feel like serves that part of me. And so that's where I'm at right now currently. But Final Four weekend was fun. Shout out to my alma mater, San Diego State, for making it to the national championship and making history this year. That was extraordinary to watch, and looking forward to seeing them continue to build. But yeah, no, it's been a good first quarter of 2023.
For sure. That's good stuff. So the reason why I wanted to bring up where you were, because I think it's so important for us to sometimes separate from our normal habitats for the purpose of what you're doing, just to kind of like refocus, recalibrate, singularly focus, almost those things. I'm an isolation person. I love the idea of being alone and getting things done. While I enjoy being around people to some magnitude, I don't necessarily like to talk to them. And so anytime I can get by myself and just be, it's a gratifying feeling. And honestly, I get so much more work done too, just being by myself. And so when you told me what you were doing, I thought it was important just to kind of share, because people think they always have to be around people or even collaborate with people in front of people. And really, I feel like you can get so much more done if you're focused being by yourself. So that's why I wanted to just kind of talk about where you were. And then on the other side, obviously, San Diego State alumni, also UCLA alumni, former Hooper, current coach. Tell me how you felt about just seeing your alma mater there. I mean, I think I said about when the NIL thing happened, I was like, we're going to see a mid-major team win the national championship soon, because guys are going to stay longer. They're going to be older teams, and like, I think the average age at San Diego State was like 21. So like, they were like, these are grown-ups playing, and so there's no fear of these young whippersnapper teams and all that other stuff going on. So like, you got grown men trying to play. So like, how'd you feel about that?
Yeah, no, good point. I loved what Coach Dutch said in his presser, just about like, we understand the NIL hype. We understand the world that we're in right now, but there's something to be said about teams that stay and the teams that build. There's time that you put into building a family and a brotherhood. There's something to be said about experience, at the college level, right? And so I just love that he really brought it back to the root, of the game. And so it was, I called it the mid-major Final Four. Like, I was like, and, to your question, it was surreal. It was surreal being able to see my alma mater, people who obviously the coaches on the men's staff were there when I was there, other than Fish himself. but even he's still very, a part of the program. And it wasn't just like my former teammates and classmates and peers from San Diego State. Like I'm from San Diego, like that's where I grew up.
Right.
And so it was like my neighborhood. Like we were walking around the arena, and I saw my middle school best friend.
Wow.
Like it was just, wow. And then there was a bunch of us. So a lot of the city came out to support. Like San Diego's like a small, big town or a small, big city. And I think that's what mattered. It was like, people don't really talk about San Diego like that, right? It's where you go to vacation and retire. And so to have San Diego State there was special, but just to represent the city like that was really cool. So to physically be there in attendance with my son, and for it to be a buzzer beating, like shots going through as the buzzers sounding. I mean, it's something you remember for the rest of your life. Like I was telling people, I'm like, I feel like I just came back from Disneyland. So it was great.
Listen, that's the best part about basketball. Sometimes I think the fact that it can bring that euphoric feeling to it, like you said, like you feel like you came back from Disneyland. That's I don't think there's anything other than sports that can do that to you. That like the highs are so high, the lows are so low, like the passion to build all those things. Like, but that's amazing to hear. Like that's what it felt like. Like those are the kind of moments that I always like talk to people about, just as far as like what sports do as a like a communal kind of thing. Like you said, people that your middle school best friend, like that's odd and ironic, but at the same time impressive, because it's like you said, it's for the city. It's not just the school and the alumni. It's like for everyone who's from there. That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
So how did baby boy feel about it? Was he excited being there?
Man, listen, my son, it was like a movie. So we went to the 3-point contest, who we knew the winner, Antoine Davis. He's a friend of ours. He's like family for us. And so we got to be there. My son had on his jersey at the 3-point competition. And then, we were able to go to a couple NBA games and have that experience. And he's been around basketball, obviously, but I think that, so people will go to the Final Four. Like I would encourage people to go to the Final Four. Like if your seats aren't great, or you don't even get to go to the game, but the environment is so electric in the city. And so just being connected and being able to give my son, that access. And then for him to, he's always, we're at San Diego State, right? So he has a connection there. He was, I don't like to use this word very much, but he was lit. Like he was so like, I have this video of him. They played California Love.
Yeah.
After San Diego State won the Final Four, and he just gets up on his chair and starts rapping it. It was just like, it was awesome. It was awesome. It was a week or 5-day span that I think he's gonna remember for the rest of his life. So it was great.
That's good. That's good. I think that's like, again, like I said before, off camera, like before we started, like one of the things that I think drew us to be connected is that we both were very young parents, right? And so, like when to hear that is like, so for me, it's a big deal, because like as a single parent, like having those moments with your kid is so important, and then having them be involved with the things that you love, right? Because like you're a hooper, you're a coach now, like that's a big deal. So like for me, Kylie's is kind of the same way. Kylie's like always in the gym. Even now, like in college, like, Dad, can I come to the gym with you? And I'm like, you still want to come? Like, I try to leave her alone at first, like let her be, but like she want to come to the gym. She's coming to Chicago.
It's in them. It's in them. Yeah.
Exactly. But it's always just like to have those moments where like they're just there, and like for them, like I think all parents want their kids to love what they love, and it doesn't always work that way. But the slim chance that we have both been lucky to have our kids like love what we love, and to be able to share an experience with them, that's amazing and impressive as well. Because like you said, like I can, like when you said that, I can see him on the chair, right? I can see him. Yeah. I can see it. Like I visualize that, right? As a parent, I can see that happening. And it's just like, that's the cool part about it. I guess the Final Four, and then just like the experience of basketball overall. And like you said too, like the experience of the Final Four is electric. I don't think there's any other word that you can use. Like, and I have FOMO. So every time I miss something that I typically right. And again, this is me trying to be a good leader. So sending my guys to the Final Four instead of me this year, because like I go all the time. So I sent 2 of my guys to the out in my place. And so while I knew I wasn't going. The moment things started kicking off and you started seeing like you're on social media seeing, oh, it's a party here or this is going on here. Like, fuck, I should have just went, right? I should have just went. But at the same time, again, it's one of those things. And I've never been to Houston before either. I've never been to Houston.
Oh, that's weird. That's surprising.
It's odd. So the first time I was supposed to go was COVID year for the McDonald's game. Obviously, it gets canceled, right? And then this year, I just made the decision just to send somebody else. I was trying to be nice. I was trying to be nice. But I've never been to Houston.
Yeah.
So it's one of those cities I know I have to visit at some point. But it's a random blip on my travel. I've never been. All right. So tell me this. So are you in year 2 or year 3 at your school now?
This is year 1. So I was at Detroit Country Day for 2 years.
Okay.
I just finished my first year at Windward.
Okay. Tell me about the transition, because I remember when you moved to Detroit for Detroit Country Day. You won there too, by the way. So I know that you win where you go.
Thank you.
Talk a little bit about I guess your initial entry into the school at Detroit Country Day. Then we'll switch over to where you are now. But talk about the initial entry into Detroit Country Day. Obviously, it's a well-known school because obviously Chris Webber went there, Shane Battier went there, amongst other greats. And this off the top of my head, I didn't research that. I just know that.
I was like, that's impressive.
Listen, I'm a real hoop head. I know this.
I was like, for you, I was like, I don't think you like really prepped that like that for this interview. So I that's impressive. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I do a little research, but
I know, but I didn't think that you like researched, Detroit Country Day alumni.
Yeah, those are two I just know off the top of my head, and I'm sure there are more, but those are the two that stick out the most. But talk about just how that happened, the transition to get there, and then was this your first time coaching? That was your first time coaching officially, right? As a head coach.
That was my first year as a head coach. Yeah.
Okay, so talk to me about all of that. Just talk to me about that.
So I have to take myself back. So I was an assistant coach at Cal State Northridge when COVID hit, and we had recently decided, my son's father and I, to have our son move. His dad's from Detroit, so we decided to have him go live with his dad. And so he was, we were going back and forth and that, and then COVID hit, and I couldn't get on a plane to see my son. Yeah. And maybe a month, 2 months goes by, and it was a quick, what am I doing here? Right. I need to be where my son is at. And so I started looking for jobs in Detroit, and I knew that I wanted to be a head coach. After being an assistant at the college level, and I was only at the college level for a year, but I just knew I was ready to have my own program. And so Detroit Country Day was open. I applied and I got it, and people ask me oh, how'd you get it? Because it's very, in coaching, it's very relationship based, right? You have to know people. Rarely do people blindly apply with a resume and get pulled through. Right. That was able to happen for me. So, by the grace of God, I got it and got in my car and moved out there. So, getting there was fun because I didn't know anybody in Detroit. I was at this prominent institution. There was hundreds of applicants. Nobody knew me. And I think that was the perfect place to start my coaching career. There was no expectations. I had acquired a team that had won 4 games in their previous 2 years, total games in 2 years. Yeah. I had 8 freshmen and 1 sophomore and 1 senior who was inexperienced. And I didn't go in looking to bring anyone else in. I didn't have any transfers. I'm like, look, I want to build this culture the right way from what I've acquired just in my knowledge of basketball so far. And that's how we got rolling. And we surprised a lot of people with what we had. So it was fun, man. It was fun. It was a good run.
That's good. 2 years. So you just mentioned something that I think is so critical to program building, company building, team building is culture, right? And so it's a catchy word now, right? But
it's a buzzword. Yeah. It's a buzzword, and it's a word that I use because people know it when you hear it, like, but it's a buzzword, so it can be tricky because they don't understand what it is.
Right, and that's the thing. So that's why I want to go is that because I get it so much now because of what I'm doing right now, right? But talk to me just about how do you establish your culture? Like I think first for me, I think you have to identify what your principles are, like what your beliefs are, what you know, like how you have to view a team. But then how do you install that or instill that in complete strangers? Let's be like complete strangers, like who don't know you, that they don't know,
Right.
you know, they don't know you, you don't know them. How do you start that process to say, okay, this is what we're going to do here, and this is how we're going to become successful?
Yeah, good question. I think the first thing I want to say is that you have to know that it's always evolving. Like if you, as an individual, as a human, know that you're always evolving and that you're invested in your personal growth, then you have to know that the culture that you're building is going to continue to evolve. So whatever you set, whatever things that you feel like you set, don't be like, oh, this is how we're always going to do it, right? Like this is what the culture is going to be. This is how we're always going to do it. So I want to say that, you know, knowing that it can always evolve. But the first thing that I did, because it was my first program, right? Like the first thing that I was leading in that way, I had to sit for like 2 weeks and really figure out what was important to me. You know, like what do I not just want to lead with, but who am I, right? So before I could expect anything from my players, I had to set the standards and expectations for myself.
Right.
And so I, you know, made it 7 is like my number. So I made it a point to narrow down my standards and expectations to 7. And then I call it the culture code. So I created that, but I created it with me in mind, in the sense of who is Jerica in her heart and in her core. Because if I don't believe in it, like I said, I'm not putting buzzwords out there. It's not like, oh, you know, discipline creates habits. If I haven't experienced that, if I haven't lived that, then I don't believe it. And I learned from one of my coaching mentors, Lorenzo Romar, he told me, he was like, don't ever teach something you don't know. Right. And so like, if you don't know things, like you can't teach them. So I had to really sit with the things that were most important to me. And that took me a little while. You know, I didn't rush that process. And in integrating it was a learning process too, because you learn you said something really good in the beginning, is that you really learn how to be a leader once you lead people, right? Like, and so I had to take into account that I have to get to know my players and my staff, right? And my administrators and all of these things. And then once I was able to get to know my players, I then can assert what their needs are, right? And that doesn't necessarily, like, there's things that I won't bend on, but what I will bend on is how I communicate certain things. So it's not always, oh, here's this packet, y'all are going to sit here and read it, so we're all on the same page, and this is what it's going to be. Like, no, it's going to be a dialogue. How do you understand it? What does that look like for you? How do you show up every day? So if, like, for example, like discipline creates habits, what does discipline look like for you? Right? What does discipline look like for you? And at 14 years old, they don't know. They don't know. So we had to build that together. We had to build that part together. So I knew that there were things so for example, you're 10 minutes early or you're late. You know, like that's just what it is. And if you come in 9 minutes early, we're running 17s, and then we run the 17 and we move on. Right. So there are certain things that I couldn't, oh, well, coach, you know, if we have a test or something like that, I knew that there were certain things that I had to very much set in stone. But I also know that I had to lead with love. I had to let them know, not even let them know. I don't like to say it like that. I had to show them that I love them. Right. And in that case, like, to your point, these are strangers. You have to learn to love them. You have to get to know them, right? Like, you have to authentically love them. And I think that that's what separates coaches now, is like, yeah, you can show up and you can say that, right? Like, you can say that you're a relational coach, but to your point, how then are you investing into these players? How then are you investing to these people, these young women, these young men, to where they can know that they're seen, loved, heard, and valued? You know, you have to practice that. So I would say that it had to start with me. right? I had to be accountable to my own stuff. And I had to really do a self-check of what, not just what's important, but what could I, like, how could I walk in my truth and really deliver that and hold my players and staff accountable to those things. So, and I would even say, you know, as we move through into year 2, there were things where like my assistant coaches, and that's the other thing, you have to hire appropriately as a head coach. You know, my assistant coaches called me one day, was like, hey, you know, I worded differently, but basically like, how do I want to say this? It was basically like, don't get soft, right? Like, don't get soft. Like, understand that what we've instilled, they're still going to respond to you. Like, because we had lost a couple games, and I was like not getting through to a couple of my kids, and it was like, oh, well, I switched up some stuff, so let's bring it back. But I had to have the people in place that would hold me accountable to that. So that's what I mean by, it's not like, oh, you set the culture, you write it down, you do it, you teach it, you love them, and then we're done. Right. You went, you know, you take a team of 8 freshmen to the Final Four, and that you got it figured out. No, like that can trick you. So I had to constantly, I have to constantly revisit. I have to check in with my players. I have to check in with my staff and continue to, you know, self-check, like, okay, well, what are my beliefs? Because my beliefs can evolve, you know? So yeah, I think that's what culture is to me.
Yeah. No, I think that's so important to piggyback off the last thing you said. I think giving it room to grow is probably the most important thing that you can do. I think a lot of people lose teams, lose people by not having by not allowing people to evolve. Like, you and I met 7 years ago, roughly. Wow, that sounds like a long time. But I think, because Kylie wasn't even 14. Kylie's, Jesus, it's 7 years ago. But I guarantee you're not the same person now that you were 7 years ago. And I promise
I shouldn't be.
Right, exactly.
I shouldn't be.
Exactly. But I think a lot of people get comfortable with whoever they meet first, and they want to stay that way. And I feel like in positions of leadership, knowing that, like, the ebbs and flow of how people move, that people are always going to be going through things, they're going to be growing, they're maturing, especially like with young people. Young people are maturing, and they're developing new ideas, new habits, new behaviors that, while yes, this is what we want to do, how we're going to attack it could be vastly different from what I said just 2 weeks ago. Because but the main thing's still the main thing. And I think that's the point. I think you said your sister keeping you like, hey, don't switch up. Like, the main thing's the main thing, but hey, we might have to just a little different. Like, it's like throwing a wrinkle in the play. Like, we're gonna run the same thing, but we're gonna bring the screen from this side instead of that side, so to throw them off a little bit. So it's just little things like that. But I think that's so important. So I want to go back to something else that you said. Before you go to Detroit, your son's there with his dad, and you almost made me cry, by the way. And the reason why I say that, because you're like, it's 2 months and I can't get on the plane to see my kid, and like how scary that is as a parent, right? I remember the same similar. I want to just tell you, because it's the same thing. Like, Kylie, I moved closer to Kylie. Like, we were always in the same city, but I moved a lot closer to Kylie. I moved literally 5 minutes away, right? So COVID happens, and I saw Kylie every day, you know, pretty much for one reason or another. I was seeing Kylie every day, and then COVID happens, and then I'm like, I ain't seen my kid in like 10 days, 12 days, and the days are counting, and I'm like I'm not, and again, I like isolation, but like, I'm like going crazy that I can't see my kid, right? And what I do is I finally just I just get in my car, like, fuck it. Like, I'm getting in my car, I'm going to go to her fucking apartment, and I'm going to sit on my car, and I'm going to FaceTime my daughter from the window so she can see me. Like, that was like, because like, I don't think people understand, like, when you're with your kid every day, and then for it all of a sudden to just be gone and have no access, how helpless, at least for me, that helpless is how I felt, right? And you made the choice to, like, okay, I got to get to my kid, I'm going to be there. And like, so like, I just wanted to, again, you and I bond for different reasons, but like, that's another thing, like, just the mindset that you had, like, I'm going to fucking Detroit, like, however I get there. And again, you said, like, luck probably played a part of that, but that was the grace of God too. Like, hey, I'm gonna apply for a random job that I don't know anybody for. I have nobody to plug my name. And like you said, you get pulled through. That never happens. That never happens.
Yeah.
And for such a prominent school too, right? Like that's a like, again, I'm from Atlanta. I ain't never seen the school in person, but I know who that school is. Like that's how important it is, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's huge.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Nope. Again, Williams, you and I are friends for for life. I'm always be your friend. So like I again, our parenting bond is different. So next thing you talked about, you took a group of 8 freshmen to the Final Four.
That was fun.
What's that like? Talk to me about that. Like, talk to me about like 8 freshmen. You said a senior who hadn't played really, and a sophomore to the Final Four.
It was like a Hoosier story. It was cool. I ain't gonna hold you. It was so cool. And we're all mindful because we knew like we're never gonna experience this again.
Yeah.
As we were doing it, we were like, we gotta hold on to these moments.
Yeah.
What was really interesting about that group was that I only had like 4 or 5 players that had ever played basketball before.
Wow.
And the other ones had never really played organized basketball. So I had a stellar soccer player, like she's going to Ohio State now, a stellar softball player, catcher, she's going Power 5 in softball, two softball players, and like just a couple other ones that didn't really ever play like that, and they would play like random, but so we had to really teach. We had to really teach. But I love teaching.
Yeah.
Like that, those are the best kind. But what made that group really special was that there was immediate buy-in. And I think because they were all so young and they were excited to be in high school, they knew enough about me that I think they trusted me fairly quickly. And so and then I had just a all-star coaching staff, like all-star, and I didn't know any of them. And we just became like instant family. But so I remember the first game of that year. So we go in and no one knows what to expect, right? Like nobody's seen us play. They knew like there was like 2 players we had a returning sophomore who was pretty good. And then there was 2 incoming freshmen that were like people knew about, but they weren't like all-stars or anything. And we go in, we play our rival, and we win by 60.
Jesus.
It was great. We hit 16 threes.
Wow.
And I think that set the tone of like, oh, and so some about me, I never talk about winning.
Yeah.
I never talk about winning. You'll never see anything anywhere that is like, we want to be a state champion. Yeah. Like it's just me. Because I feel like it takes away from the process, right? So it's like you wake up, you do all the things, you wake up, it'll come, trust me. I have enough rings to prove that. But like, let's focus on the process. So I think that first game kind of shocked my kids.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so we kept winning. And then we we only lost 3 games that whole season. Okay. So we didn't lose a ton, but we kept having to like, what's the word? We kept having to reaffirm that they're capable.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so we beat a whole bunch of teams we weren't supposed to beat. Like I had during one of our games, there were 2 kids that were going to college on the other team, and they're going through, I started 4 freshmen and 1 sophomore. And they're going through, or 3 freshmen, 1 sophomore, 1 senior, and they're going through the lineup, and everyone in the stands is kind of like, oh, this is going to be easy. And we end up getting up by like 20 at half. Wow. And the AD comes to me right at halftime and was like, I just have to say that what you're like, this has to be coaching. Like this has to be coaching. You know what I mean? Like just watching them. And a lot of it's like strategy and stuff, but I never had to. There was one kid I'd like break down to build up, but I never really had to overextend to get them to listen and things like that. But it was so cool for me to be able to teach basketball because we didn't have one play, Williams. We had not one set we just did read and react.
Yeah.
And it was so just in these games, we had a game that we won at the buzzer.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what to draw. Not even I don't know, but I know my team.
Yeah.
They got the ball and they made the right read and they hit the shot.
Yeah.
You know, so being able to see them develop over the course of the year was really cool. So there's winning and then there's winning championships, right? Those are very different things.
Right.
So like winning games, winning championships are very different things. So when we get into the playoffs, I've learned like you have to teach people how to win.
Yeah.
And you have to teach them that they're winners, like on the inside, right? Like like if you lose a couple games, like Steph Curry said it. Was it Steph? Somebody said it recently. It was like, oh, Steph Curry said it in his documentary that's coming out later in the year. But he said, you know, we're not going to adopt this losing mentality. Like no matter how much we lose, we're not going to adopt that, you know? And so I was very mindful of how do I continue to teach them that they are winners, right? Because you can win games and you can get away from what it like kind of took or takes to do that continuously on a big stage. And so I think that we continued to, as we went into the playoffs, man, my kids are freshmen. They didn't have nothing to lose.
Right.
They was excited to be there. All of our games that we played looked like our practices. Like they just looked like our practices. And we were just able to execute down the stretch and like come together and pull, you know, strings of wins together that took us further than anyone could have even thought.
Yeah.
You know, so it was definitely a season. It was a season to remember for sure.
That's good stuff. I love to hear that. I love to hear that. I think one of the things that like, I think you can teach read and react to young people. You can teach anything else, right? Because I think that is the baseline for every basketball play in basketball. It's the idea that reacting to what someone else does, finding an open person, moving, like all those things are you have to have those things before you can learn anything else. You have to, because
and it's tough with this group, this age, this generation, because they don't go out and play at the park as much as we did.
Yep.
So we were able to just naturally know how to do it because it was part of our daily activity.
Yep. And
so what I'm finding is teaching it, you know, takes a different element or more practice or patience. Yeah. You know, because that's not something that they practice.
Yeah. I think that's so true too. I think it's one of those things that I don't think that most of the kids in this generation don't play pickup, and they don't play pickup with older people too. Like they'll go to the park and be with their friends, but they're literally like fucking around, right? Probably I know you and probably me. When I played pickup, I was playing with older people, and I
played with adults. Yeah,
always.
Grown men.
Always, and it was like because I had to, like, first of all, you weren't getting the ball a lot, so you had to make shots when you're open. You had to play defense, like you had to pass the open person, like all these things that like you had to do just to get on the court, literally just to get on the court. Hopefully you win so you stay on the court, right? And so, but I think learning how to play with those kind of people definitely helped me growing up, because my basketball game was always simple: break down the paint, kick it out. If no one's open, take a shot. Like it was so simple at the end of the day. Like hit an open shot when you're open, pass to the open person, play defense. That's it. Everything else is
so to be able to teach instinct, because what you just described then becomes instinct. But then as a coach now, you're like, well, how do I teach instinct? Well, you have to put them in positions to use their instinct, which means you don't talk a lot.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And so you have to kind of like create opportunities for them to make a read and not stop it. You have to let them do it, you know? And so with a young group, that was fun. And then we ended up, and then the next year, we had lost 4 in a row at a point. We went into the playoffs 8-8.
Wow.
And so it was a totally different experience. I had a similar team, mostly our returners. I think I had one newcomer, I had one incoming freshman. And then when the playoffs hit, we knew what time it was. Like we had that experience under our belt, and we ended up going into the Final Four again.
Wow. And
shocked everybody. So I say that to say is that it doesn't always look the same. Yep. You know, it requires different things. It requires evolution. It requires adjustments. But when you focus on, to your point, like the main thing, you keep the main things the main thing, and you're open to growing as a coach and teaching things a certain way or whatever, then ultimately, and you still may not get to the Final Four. Like, you know what I mean? Like we didn't win a bunch of games, but we got to the Final Four. And then this previous year, they didn't, you know, like, but it doesn't mean that you're doing things wrong. Right. You know what I'm saying? So just continuing to be open to that. And that's what like my experience at Windward was. So we can like transition to that because my experience at Windward looked very different than it did at Country Day. So it was always evolving.
Yeah, for sure. So as we do that, we transition to Windward. First, I guess the question is, what gets you back to California? Is it simply just the job that gets you back to California? Are the Detroit winters just ridiculous? Because I know they are. What is it that gets you back to Cali?
Good question. I think a combination of both. I wasn't looking to leave. I wasn't looking to leave. And my best friend sent me something at 2 a.m. and was like, she sent me the Windward job. And if you're in girls basketball, you know what Windward girls basketball is. And especially if you grew up in Southern California, like they are a staple in the girls basketball community and have been for a long time. And so the fact that the job was open, so the coach who left, she left to become the head coach of the Phoenix Mercury.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that kind of puts into perspective, like,
it does.
And that's not just Windward, that's speaking to her, right? Like to Vanessa Nygaard, right? And her, what she's been able to accomplish as a coach in her own right. But that just goes to like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the realm that you're in. You know?
No, like first of all, that jump never happens. First of all, nobody jumps from high school basketball to professional basketball at any level, really. So like, that's crazy. But okay, continue.
So it was one of those openings don't come up very much. Like after I got the job, like so this year I coached against the schools in Southern California. And the coaches of those schools are the coaches that I played against when I was playing. Wow. So they're still there, right? So when these jobs come available, people don't leave, you know? And so I had to go for it. I had to go for it. And something very similar happened at Country Day. I didn't know anybody there. I mean, my name carries a little more weight in Southern California. So like once they saw my resume, they, you know, could obviously ask around or whatever, but they told me it was like my resume stood out. You know, and that was, and I'll say this to anybody that's listening that's like applies for coaching jobs. I hired a graphic designer to do my resume. Like the actual appearance of it, like now that I hire people, I've been hiring people for a long time, but I'm just saying, even in coaching, I don't think people put too much thought into that, or they don't think that it matters, and it matters a lot. It matters a lot. But it was one of those things where they saw it, they pulled it out and, you know, flew me out 2 days later to interview in person. So it moved really quick, but that was, so in terms of the job, I understood the opportunity and how it was going to leverage my career path, my trajectory pretty quickly. And my son was older. I had been in Detroit for 2 years. We were in a rhythm. So I knew where he was, what his days looked like. His dad and stepmom and I had now been around each other enough to really form like a rhythm together. And he was older, you know, and so it felt safe enough to be able to move back. And to be honest, Detroit, so this is where people get it messed up. You can't compare the Midwest to Southern California. Like that's not two very different places. So people are like, oh, wow, it's not, obviously it's not the same. You know what I mean? Like obviously like Southern California, we don't have winters, right? So I had to adjust. Did I love it? No, but Detroit served me well. You know what I mean? Like it served me well. Like I was able to get things. That's why I feel like a lot of great people come out of the Midwest because of, it's not just the weather. It's not just the cold. I think it's what the cold represents. You know what I mean? Like it's tough. Like you got to be tough. The things that matter there, it's very blue collar, right? The things that matter there aren't things that matter in Los Angeles necessarily. But they're equally as important. And so I was able to get really grounded, really rooted. Very clear there. And obviously I was able to be by my son
Yeah.
And so that gave me that. And I don't have family in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
My son is my only family in Detroit.
Yeah.
And so the thought of being back home just gave me some air.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It gave me air. And like I said, it felt safe enough because the only reason why I was there was my child. And while Detroit was able to serve me well in terms of my career, my relationships, I have lifelong relationships in Detroit now.
Yeah.
There's no place like home and where your family is. And so those, I would say 3 or 4 things combined, it made sense. It was the logical next step.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's all you can ask for, really. I mean, again, first thing I'll say this: I just hired somebody to do my resume as well. Literally, like, don't laugh at me, but I literally have the same resume format from my first ever resume. I just literally added. I never changed anything.
It's time. It was time.
So my new resume actually just got done like 2 weeks ago, and I was like, wow, this is what. Even like the verbiage, of like the same shit that I know that I do, but how do I verbalize it where it comes off and it pops? And so I didn't know how to do that. And so, so I think that's super important. I think, and I encourage anybody who has not done it to hire a resume writer or a graphic designer, someone that can really make your resume stand out, because it has to pop. It definitely has to pop. It's like anything else. Anything, like, things have to, like, people, while information is great, shiny things get looked at first. They just do. They just do. Like, the pretty
It's
things.
like appearance.
Yep.
People crack me up and they're like, oh, it's not about your appearance. Okay. All right. Okay. You keep doing that. Keep going through life like that. Now, once you get to a certain point, do whatever. You know what I mean? But trust and believe, the way that I look and how I carry myself and the way I dress has moved me into certain rooms. Now I got to be able to execute once I get in the room. You know what I mean? But I know that I can do that. But and that's how me and my son spend a lot of time. I'm like, no, you're not wearing sweats and Crocs everywhere. You're just not. You know, like, it matters. So anyway, that's a whole different conversation.
For sure. For sure. All right. So tell me about the season. Story program. Do you take over for a legendary coach, obviously?
Which I did the same thing at Country Day, by the way.
Really?
I replaced all-time Michigan, the winningest coach in Michigan girls basketball history.
Oh shit. Okay. See, I know that. Wow. So okay. So sometimes, I know they typically say it's hard to follow a great, but I will say this, because I know you. When you're great, also, it's a little bit less pressure, I would say. So, a bit less pressure.
Man, you know what? And greatness isn't about the accolades, man. I think greatness is like, you got to know who you are.
Yep.
Like, if you know who you are winning, right? And that's what I tell coaches who, like, younger coaches or coaches who, may ask me for advice or whatever. I'm like, you got to know what your convictions are.
Yep.
Coach Tommy at Arizona taught me that, like, and he's awesome, the men's coach. And he's like, what are your convictions? And I had to sit down and I had to write them down. Right. And it's like, well, what do you stand for? So I think that was something that, regardless of who I know how to, because I believe one of my convictions is, I believe there's room for everybody. And so because of that, I don't look at someone who I've succeeded as, oh, well, now I have to do more than them, or I have to compare myself to them. Like, no, they're great in their own right. So I know how to honor that. So I'm able to honor my, Coach Frank Orlando from Country Day. I'm able to honor Vanessa Nygaard, right? Like, and carry the culture, like the history, the lineage, the legacy through, while still understanding and knowing how to be myself, like, be fully authentically myself and lead that way, and know that that's going to have its impact in its own right. So that it can be challenging for some people, and it has its challenges in some ways. It shows up in some ways, but it doesn't, because comparison is the thief of joy. Like, I'm not here to compare myself to anybody, you know what I mean? And I'm not here to, like, outdo anybody, or, like, it's between me and God. Like, I'm not, right? And so however many people, not even how many, but the way that I can impact these girls. Like, I coached to be the woman I needed growing up. That's why I coach. I don't coach to win games.
Yeah.
Like winning games comes, but that's not why I do it. So, but yeah, no, it was definitely, I mean, it's fun replacing legends. Like, you know, then you become part of that legacy, you know, like, so it's cool.
Yeah. So that line you just said, and I think you wrote it on LinkedIn maybe a couple months ago. You coach to be the person that the adult that you needed when you were a kid. That's so true. I think people who have void in some way, you can go two routes, right? You can either try to build and become the version of the person that you wanted, or you follow the same route, right? And so,
wait, say that again. Say that one more time. That was good.
I said, oh, see now. I said, so you either build and become the person that you needed when you were younger, or you follow the same route and go the opposite way. And I know I didn't say it the same way that time.
You didn't. You said the way you said it before was better, but it's okay.
Listen, we got to record it. It's okay.
All right, cool.
But I think that's so important. I think that's I think it's important because I think a lot of times people often talk about how they don't know how to do something, or they never were taught how to be something. But in actuality, the lack of it sometimes shows you exactly how to do it, right? So it's how I parent, right? It's for me, it's how I parent. Like, I wasn't like, and not in a bad way, I'm not bashing my parent, but I wasn't loved on how I love on my kid, right? I wasn't no one came to my games. Like, no one, like, my mom saw me play basketball the first time when I was 18. Like, she never saw me play anything. I played everything growing up. So when my kid played golf at 5, I was at every meet. And when she ran track at 8, I was there. So like, those things matter, but no one taught me how to do that. No one said, James, you have to do this in order to be a good parent. I knew what
you didn't get.
Exactly. Yeah. I knew what I needed, and I knew that I was going to give. I had decided before she even came out, I knew that I was going to give her everything that I didn't get, on top of all the good things that I got. So, but I think that's so important. Like, when I read that, I was like, honestly, that may have been the first thought when I was like, I got to talk to her on the podcast. Cause I was like, that was so, like, to hear it. Like, I think it's one of those things I walked with, but I never like verbalized to anyone else.
Yeah, or could articulate.
Exactly. So to read it, I was like, wow. But again, I know you, so like, I wasn't surprised, right? So
right. Yeah.
So tell me this. So, like, because I know I want to get to some other things too. So, but tell me just a little bit about how new team, new culture, legacy there also. How do you establish, again, like, is it the same? Now you have a bit more practice and repetition. Exactly. So is it easier this go around to establish the culture, and then to get to the point where you're winning games, right? So you said you guys made it to the you said sectional championship?
We won league and we made it to the open division.
Okay.
It's hard to explain. Southern section California, how we do things, because there's so many people here. Right. So we do things a little different. So that I would have to explain that on another episode. But we did well. We had a good season. Yeah.
Okay. What was the record overall? What did y'all do?
We were 18-10.
Okay. One league. I would imagine pretty competitive league, just based off what I know.
Decent. Like, we had one other competitor that was. We were neck and neck because they had beat us earlier in they had beat us in the preseason.
Okay.
So then we were able to beat them for league. And then, we had my strength of schedule score was 22.
Wow. In the entire state.
22. Like the points.
Okay.
Like the points. So we had 22 points in terms of our strength of schedule, and like 15 is exceptionally high.
Gotcha.
So 22 was like, we played everybody. We played everybody. So
ain't no ducking.
We did, yeah. No. But what was your question? Establishing culture, was it easy?
Yep.
Establishing culture is never easy because it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I learned. I think in my first year, I'm like, first year, you get a freshman, you guys go to the Final Four, you could easily be like, oh yeah, I got to figure it out. Y'all better come to my classes in my seminar, right? Like, I know how to coach. But then you go into that next year and lose you know, a whole bunch of games. You're like, oh. So it's not easy. I would say that it requires the same level of focus, which is why I find myself out here in the desert after the season, because I pour into those 5 months, 6, 7 months, you know. I would say it's always different because you always have new people. And the thing with working with high schoolers is that they're very different from ages 14. It's like the girls that I had at 14, when they are 17, they're different. You know, and so you almost get a new version of the kid every year. And I think for me, I always had to recalibrate, right? Like, well, what's working, what's not. And you do that every day. You know what I mean? And so I would say, no, it hasn't been easy. It's been, what's the word I want to use here? Man, it's just a constant like learning opportunity. It's a constant learning opportunity. But I think that's something that I took away from this year. It wasn't as easy to get buy-in, I don't think, because they're not all freshmen. I had all returners. And so I had to, but I would say, like, let's say the main thing for me is relationships. I had to listen. Like, that's what I'm like, you have to listen as a leader and as a coach, what your kids are saying. You know what I mean? Like, I want to have my certain things in place and how I lead and how I mentor and how I coach, but what are they telling you? Or what are they not saying? What do they need help articulating? And I did a lot of that this year. To where my kids have been able to articulate to me how much they've changed, like how much they've grown. And you can see it on the basketball court, right? Like you can see it translate. So I would say, like, basketball was a focus, but there's going to be the way that we attack basketball, like on the on-court stuff next year, is going to look different because of what we were able to establish in the beginning or in this first year in terms of relationships. So not black and white. It's not black and white. It's just ongoing. And honestly, Williams, my biggest thing that I think I learned this year about culture, it's not just me and my players. It's my coaching staff. That's where I needed to get better. You know what I mean? Like, and I could talk about, I needed to get better at end of game strategy and I need to get better. No, like that. Yes, I need to get better at all those things. Like 1,000%. Like, count on me to get better at those things. But learning how to coach your coaches is just as important, you know, pivotal in your culture. Is it like they're a part of your culture? And so, man, it's been a lot of learning for me, a lot of growing. I do feel more experienced, which has been cool. You know, like, being a first-year coach is very different than being a third-year coach. You know, like, it is different. So I think that I've been able to stomach criticism way better, you know, like way better. So that's been like, life is just lighter. You know what I mean? Like, you win games, you lose games. I wasn't the best loser in the beginning. Like, I would go home and have to call my parents and, you know, decompress in a way that didn't always feel healthy all the time. But now I don't get used to losing, obviously, but now I'm able to look at that and be like, oh, okay. So that was kind of a broad answer, but it's always different. It's always evolving, you know, like culture takes so much time, but Windward's such a great place to be, you know, the resources, the support, like a lot of our games were standing room only, which is just, it's the environment you want to be in. You know, it's the environment you want to be in. And that's why, like, at Country Day, like, it was really only our fans. I mean, our parents, like, we didn't really have fan support like that. And so to be in a place where it's like women's basketball or girls basketball is a priority and people come out and they watch, like, I love the environment. So, but always evolving.
That's good stuff. One thing you just mentioned that I think is critical is the communication piece. And I think people don't understand how important the ability to just have a conversation with someone is, right? And I think, like you said, from the players to the coaches, I think it's one of the things that I as I kind of continue to evolve and grow, it's one of the things that is something that I may have known, but it was something that, again, that maybe you don't know how to articulate or verbalize. But when you're reading like all these books about successful people, you hear the repeat pattern of behavior. And most of these people are great communicators. Or you hear stories about how President Obama, if he meets you for 30 seconds, you feel like the most important person in the world for those 30 seconds that he met you, because he knows how to connect, right? Like, you know how to connect with somebody, right?
That's important. It's
right.
So good.
In coaching, or in leadership in particular, being able to connect with your people, both players and your other coaches, is so vital to the ability to keep the main thing, or rowing in the same direction, whatever the term you want to use. Like, if they have to know that you care about what they care about. And then you, at the same point, you have to know that they care about what you care about, so that you guys can identify whatever that main goal is, whether it's to be successful, to grow, to win, whatever it is, that that we're all on the same page. And I think once people realize that, which for me, my takeaway from that is that everyone knows what's important to you, and you know what's important to them. And then that's how you get buy-in, in my opinion. That's how you get buy-in, 100% buy-in, that we know we give a fuck about the same thing. And as long as we do, we can, no matter what happens, no matter, like you said, if you have to pivot or shift or recalibrate, we still know that the goal is still the goal. And it's just about how we're going to get there.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't believe those same things. And that's where being a great communicator is being able to have uncomfortable conversations, right? Like, I was very adamant about teaching my girls how to use their voice when it feels uncomfortable, you know, and that's something that I've had to practice. So I have no problem. Now I'm older than them, but it's still challenging as adults. Adults run from hard conversations, you know, or it's like but I'm saying, so to your point, I don't want to draw this out too long, but to your point, you can have a conversation with somebody and you can realize that, like, we're not going to agree here. And you have to still be okay and still find a way to collaborate to whatever it is that you need to get done, to get the job done, right? Like, take the emotion out of it, take the taking it personal out, right? Like, that's just being an adult. That's being able to, so those are the parts of communication that I don't like to leave out. Like, it's not always going to end the way that you think, right? But it can still be peaceful, even if we don't want the same thing. You know what I mean? So no, communication is, I would say this. I wouldn't say communication is an underrated skill, right? I think that the way, so there's difference between, like, dialoguing and talking and communicating. You know what I mean? Right? Like, how are you connecting to the other person? Does that person feel understood and heard? Do you feel understood and heard? Are you guys able to, like, peacefully move through to, like, you know, are you able to unpack layers? Like, there's levels to it. And so in that regard, I know that I'm a great communicator, and that's something that helps me connect with my players and my staff and everybody else I work with, you know?
Right. All right. Good stuff. All right. All those things are, again, we've never talked about most of this stuff, but hearing you talk about it, none of these things are surprising for me. So that's why I'm like, sometimes I feel like when people do interviews, they try to, like, fill in with stuff just because I know you, like, I don't need an extra filler. So it's just like, okay, we can move on to
move on to the next thing. Yep, here for it.
Like, I get it, right? I get it. I hear you. I understand. So yeah. Talk to me a little bit about this. So, like, you grew up a hooper, San Diego, and then was it Seattle?
So no, I didn't move to Seattle until I moved to Seattle to get married and have my son.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Never mind.
But I was in San Diego. So I grew up in Oregon. Well, I was in Oregon until I was 8.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Okay. Wow. See, this is how much this is how much I know Jerica, that, like, again, I know her whole life story. I'm just mixing up cities.
Yeah. But you got the region right, the Northwest.
Right. Which I'm going to Portland tomorrow, by the way, for Hoop Summit.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So looking forward to that. But anyway, so grew up between Oregon and San Diego. Loved hoop. Talk a little bit about your early career as a basketball player, both high school and your initial entry into college. Like, talk to me a little bit about that and, like, what that was like for you.
High school. So nobody in my family played basketball, and I fell on basketball. I was like, it was an accident. but I fell in love with it. And once I realized I loved it, I, went the whole body in, not even 2 feet. Like, this is what I'm doing. High school was great, man. I was very fortunate to play with a coach who I'm still very close and connected to. And he was able to bring the best out of me in a lot of different ways. I was able to have very strong relationships with my teammates. Was able to be a part of building a dynasty. And then from there went to UCLA for basketball and then transferred home to San Diego State. But, high school, I tell my kids now, I'm like, man, you're not going to remember the games. You're going to remember the people you do them with. You're going to remember the people you played them with. Like, I asked so many people, I'm like, oh, they'll tell me about a situation that happened in a game or something. Or I'm like, did you guys win or lose? And like, I don't remember.
Right.
Like, I don't know. Like, or, oh, I remember my teammates, like we did this or we did that. And I'm like, oh, what tournament was it? They don't know.
Right.
And I do that on purpose. You know what I'm saying? To bring it back to like the main thing. Right. So no, high school was fun, man. High school was fun. We won a lot of games. Lost my senior year in the championship, missed the game winner. So, but I'm at peace with it now.
Yeah. But okay, so before we even go further, you took the game winner. Most people don't have the balls to take the game winner.
So you know what? No, listen, I want to speak to that. So my coach, after the game, I was devastated. So I had sprained my ankle the first game of the playoffs, like severely, like a hairline fracture sprain.
Oh, wow.
And so I sat out the next game, and then the semifinals, I like medicine me up, double ankle brace me, ice, whatever. And I ended up, being like the leading scorer. Like I had like 25-10 or something that game, and we won. But I had nothing left in the championship. Like I couldn't move my leg really. Like I was just so out of it. And that was hard, man. That was hard. But I don't really remember the game. I just kind of remember the parts that I'm giving you.
Yeah.
And I took the shot, and I remember my coach like drew it up for me, and I was in the huddle. And this is why I missed, because I didn't believe I could make it. You know what I mean? Because I had played like that whole game. I was just like, I'm so off, And so when he drew it up for me, that's why I missed, because I didn't have it here. And after the game, he goes, Jerica has earned the right to take the last shot. She's taking the last shot every single time. Right. Like, that's just what it is. And that stuck with me, And so as a coach now, so ironically, our state playoff game this year, I had one senior who's going to Princeton, who has proven herself time and time again, right? Game was on the line, gave her the ball. She missed the shot from like the same spot that I missed. And it was against my high school, my old high school. And I, said to her and everybody else, like, she's taking that shot 1,000 times. I don't care if she makes it or misses it. Yeah. There was no better shot, right? And so that experience that I got, I would say the experience I got, but the messaging that I got from my coach, that messaging that I got from my coach was so important. So in terms of like confidence, right? Like I pride myself and my players on like, I don't care if you miss 1,000,000 shots. Yeah. Don't let that dictate your confidence. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was a life-changing experience for me. Not the game part. You know what I'm saying? Like, not even like if I made the shot, because it's not about me, it's about my team. Right. But even if we would have won the game, it's like, okay, but it was the life lesson that I was able to get out of that made that really special for me.
For sure. I love to hear that. I think that's so important. I think so many people lose the idea that you're supposed to pour. Can you hear me? I know I just froze.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're good.
Okay. But that you're supposed to pour into your kids. That's what you're supposed to do. So
yeah, exactly.
You're supposed to make them think that, like, I know you've heard the term, those kids will run through a brick wall for their coach. Like that's when you pour into your kids to give them so much confidence that I give no, about this wall in front of me. It's going to come down if I run.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what your coach did to you. I mean, that's what you did to your player. I think that's an epic moment for me, to be honest. I think, someone believing in you even more so than you believed in yourself in the moment. And
That's what they need.
right,
That's what they need.
right. And I guarantee you, in that moment, while you probably were heartbroken, the confidence that you carry now, I guarantee you,
Oh,
it comes from that. It comes from that for sure.
absolutely. 1,000%.
No.
Yeah, no, I've been fortunate to have great coaches. And when I say great coaches, I don't mean that they were perfect all the time. That doesn't mean we got along. That doesn't mean I hated a couple of my coaches along the way, but I accredit them so much for the woman I am now, you know?
Yeah. No, I think that honestly, Jerica, I think that's a perfect spot to end, to be honest. I think the idea that coaches aren't perfect, neither are players, but the end goal and the most important part is to always communicate and lift up. I think if you do that, you have more functioning, well balanced adults is what you have, right?
In the world, we want to be positive contributors to society. That's what we're here to be.
That's it. You're not that's the most important part. And I feel like that right there was like key, like how your career ended in high school and how your first year ends again, and honestly, even weirder against your old high school, which is just ironic.
Wild. Yeah.
So but again, to know like to like be confident, know like I have so much confidence in this person, make or miss, I'm living with that shot. Right. And that's all you want. Like, and I think that's how we have to live with as people. Like, it's not that people aren't going to make mistakes and
take the shot.
Right,
take the shot.
And I'm like, it's like if you're my friend, and this could be business, whatever. Like, if I know that you can do what we're set out to do, whether you succeed and or fail, I'm living with it because I know that you can do it. And that's how it's supposed to go. Like, I think a lot of people are so caught up on the success and or failure of something, we're not realizing that like it's just important to like we're there. We're every decision that we make has a 50-50 chance of being good or bad. That's just kind of how it goes. Like, it's you're either going to succeed or fail. For me, it's one of those things. When I learned that, I was able to make better decisions. Like, to be able to live with like whatever like to have the information, make the best decision based on the information I've been given, and live with the outcome of it, whether I win or lose, and whatever it is. That's when I became an adult to me. Before that, I was emotional. I was, But like when I grasped that is when I became an adult. And that's all you want. I think that's what you want adults to be like. Be comfortable and confident in whatever decision you make and live with it. That's it. Yeah.
Well said.
Yep. I appreciate you so much, Williams.
Likewise.
Long time overdue. I'm happy to see that you're doing well. Obviously, all these other pleasantries that we'll exchange. But
likewise, and congrats on the evolution of your business and podcast, and continue to grow the game. We appreciate it.
I appreciate that. I'm gonna close this out. So podcast called Attacking the Paint. I say this now. We break information down and we kick it out. Right. That's it. It's just like breaking down the defense, kicking out. How I play basketball, to be honest. I get in the paint, attack the paint, kick it out. That's what it was. And so we break it down, we kick it out. And so Williams, I appreciate you allowing us to break down some of your story, as it is inspiring and encouraging to so many people. And now we can kick it out to those people, and hopefully they gain that inspiration and kind of move forward that way. So I appreciate you.
That's awesome. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.